Consent agenda item 5A.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Okay, business item 6A. That's the fiscal year 2015 true-up. Stephen, or whomever, April?
April White, your operations manager. Okay, this, you initially, I believe I informally brought this to your attention, and at one point in time, I gave you notice of a $95,000 payment that we owed Lee County. This is the true-up process, so because we are paying, the agreement, how we're set up to pay our fees is basically to cover the actual costs of what it's costing Lee County to provide us our water, our wastewater. So I guess what happens is we kind of run a year lag behind on this, and this particular year we ran extra far behind. Lee County did, as far as getting that true up to us. So we didn't get the true up for 2015 until this past August. So I came into it new, and of course Chris came into it new, and so we had to do a lot of catch up and get a lot of the history. So the way I understand it for the Cliff Note version is historically there has been some discussion about how the district is to participate in the capital costs of the plant over here. And so there's two in the agreement, the wastewater treatment agreement. There's two different mechanisms for us to cover the cost of capital. And one of those is based on capacity, and that's so as the system grows, and we have agreed to pay on the connection fees. And part of that agreement is if we pay the connection fees to increase the capacity of the system, then they wouldn't charge us the debt cost. And so in the calculation that they presented to us, that was appropriately done. We're paying the connection fees. The debt part was excluded. The other component of the capital costs is what we call in the formula R&R, and that's just the repair and replacement of existing equipment that's over there at the plant. So we struggled with that as far as what historically we've struggled with that on understanding that, and also making sure that we are paying our fair share of that. So we went to a meeting with the county staff. Chris and I went, and the rate consultants, their rate consultant, our rate consultant, pretty much everyone at the table except the attorneys, because we understand that
Who wants to buy those guys, right?
We would have just been put in a corner anyways, you know?
Yeah, so we
We're
wanted to understand from an operational perspective, what is this about? What are we doing? And so afterwards, we kind of had a consensus at that meeting that, okay, well, we understand now what this component of this formula is. And as management, we concurred that, okay, well, I realize that we have to pay our share of this cost. So part of our problem, okay, well, what are our obstacles here? The obstacles is we have a 3-year rate study where on our utility customers, our rates have been set. And this capital component isn't in there. And so Lee County is willing to work with us because, this is a partnership. We're buying our water from them. We can't do it without them. And so during that discussion, they were very agreeable that, okay, we'll take this R&R component out of the 2015. And because we're not prepared yet, we're going to take it out of the 2016 year too, because we haven't done the true up yet for the 2016 year. And so what we did as management back in August, because we were accumulating this cost, now that we've agreed that we have to pay this capital component in this volumetric formula, that we agreed as management, and perhaps I shouldn't have, but we agreed to go ahead and let Lee County set the new rate. So now we're paying it's 301. Because now that we're paying that in the true-up formula for 2016, it'll fall out then, and we'll be less behind for a cash payment on this true-up process. So what we agreed, and the county was agreeable to, that we would keep this component out of the 2015 true-up, which is this payment. We'll keep it out of the 2016 true-up, but we're including it in the current year, the 2017. So that's why we're pushing. There's been a lot of conversation about a rate study, is we kind of need to go into the rate study earlier than anticipated so we can recapture these capital costs. But over the 3-year window of our current rate structure, we're not really in the hole, because also in that same model, in the 2015 year, we had the huge credit. We had almost a $2 million credit that we took. That was based on those historical years of the true-up not being done, and we ended up having this huge credit with Lee County. So we're not really behind in the overall 3-year picture, but we want to make sure that we kind of reset what we're doing, readdress the capital costs, readdress the rates, and make sure that everything is included in there, because the idea is that this is a cost that needs to be, deferred to our customer base in our fee structure. So that is still a problem, but because Lee County has been agreeable to push that out, we're at least we're minimizing the impact of that in the current 3-year study. So they agreed to take that component out. Our rate consultant, Burton, recalculated it without that component in there, and then the net payment for the true-up is the $20,567.34. And so that's what's before you today, is to approve that payment, because anything over $10,000 has to be approved. And because this is a payment that's part of a contractual agreement, I think that it should come to the board regardless. So that's what we're asking for today, is approval. And also, in the action requested, I've listed out several things, basically to memorialize the agreement and wanting to work with Lee County and coming to an overall understanding for the organization as far as what these costs are. We worked with the engineers, we had a conference call, and we have even suggested to Lee County, a different methodology for applying these costs to us, something that would be a little bit, what we interpret as a fairer approach based on what we think our usage of the facility is. And they were even agreeable to go, let's come to the table and let's talk about it. If there's something that we need to readdress, we all have agreed that this is an old agreement. It probably could stand to be revised in a lot of areas. They've agreed to, they're going to welcome our engineers to sit with their engineers about any future facility plans and revisions, to give us some insight to make sure that, hey, if we have to pay a portion of this capital, we want to understand what all are you doing. To put it in the simplest format is, we don't want to pay a percentage of Taj Mahal if we don't need Taj Mahal. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they've agreed that, we'll sit down annually for these revisions and we can talk about that to be sure that we're all on the same page. But my perspective is I don't want to take an adversarial approach to this partnership anymore, because we are in the business of selling water and we are in the business of buying water from Lee County, so we have to work together.
April, this is a very complex business which has never been handled, to my way of thinking, perfectly. And hopefully it'll get a lot better in the future. But I am curious if Lee County Water Utilities needs R&R on this plant. To who else are they selling wastewater to? And are we
Sharing that cost? Are we sharing that R&R?
Yeah. Who else is involved in this business? And I know that there's gonna be some construction south of Daniels for a Publix and close to the airport, and this whole thing goes to the airport, I'm 99% sure. I guess the question is, are you convinced that we are paying our appropriate prorated share of what it costs to R&R that plant?
Well, and that was something that during a conference call that we had, and I believe Tony was on that conference call, that Tyler called out, is that, you know, they've rehabbed this facility from a one
One MGD.
Yes, to a 3. And so what Tyler wants to propose to the county, and they're agreeable to sit down and crunch the numbers and look at it, is to redesign how we're prorating that portion to us. And so that is something that, and also by having the engineers, our engineers involved in that process, that's exactly what the conversation kind of evolved around, is we want to be involved to make sure on an annual basis, we want to be involved in what's going on over there, to have a checks and balance, to make sure that we feel comfortable that we're only paying our prorated share based on our usage of the facility.
Yeah,
And so
Mr.
that's,
Gott, I
that's
think
what
it-
this is agreeing to.
Yeah, and I think, point number 5 of the memorandum of action requested, the parenthetical reference. After the parenthetical reference sort of makes that point, that agreeing to the rate without conceding that it was or is appropriate to include the entire 148,800 in the R&R amount in the calculation. I think that's part of that conversation.
Yes.
We're not conceding it. We're saying we're going to look at it, but not conceding it.
Well, the 148, I don't think was the problem. It was more of that look forward. The 148 was just I believe if I understand correctly, just increasing the capacity of the facility from the 1 GDM to the 3. But they also provided us a look ahead. And there's also some current plans that they're working on as far as building and operations, building over there. And so that's what our engineer wants to be involved in, to make sure that we're understanding that fully, and to make sure that we are in agreement. And the county wants us to be in agreement, because this is something that's, right now, how we have this agreement set, by paying actual costs, this is something that we have to deal with every year. So we're trying to dig in a little bit more this year, so we fully understand what it is we're doing, what it is they're doing with the facility, so we can come to a quicker concurrence when it comes time to paying this true-up cost. What we're also going to evaluate when we do this rate study is look at this agreement and see if perhaps, based on our current usage, if it's not time for us to consider moving to a different payment plan, going into just their overall bulk rate of how they sell bulk water to all their other customers versus this customized structure. So that's something that needs to be evaluated routinely, and I'm not sure if we've done that yet with the agreement. So we kind of looked at the agreement overall. How do we need to manage this agreement? What ability do we have to control our costs? And that's what we're kind of doing. That's why all of these things are listed out, because this is what we came to the table with Lee County, and how we want to move forward and evaluate these
Does Lee
things.
County sell wastewater to other facilities?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mr. Tinkle, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, can you go back to that spreadsheet? This is where I like to check numbers, because I've done this before, and the devil's in the details. Go to line 10, under line number, 10. They're saying that the total annual wastewater flow, and I don't know if this, I'm assuming is is it through calendar 2015?
Probably 9/30/15.
Okay, whatever.
Fiscal year
It's
2015.
412 million gallon, that's 1.1 million gallon a day. 1.1 million gallon a day, just divided by 365. Is that the water that they are measuring coming in, or is that water sold through the meter? And if it's water sold through the meter, is it times 90%? Question 1. Second question. Line 17 appears to be line 12 appears to be the allocation of Gateway, which is 229, which is a little bit more than half of that. If we're running a 1.13 million gallon a day average flow, and I realize there's average and peaks, why are we going to a 3 million gallon a day plant? Why are we spending that kind of money for that kind of expansion and the flow isn't there? And why are we paying for the guesstimate of the flow
I
increase?
think it may have something to do with their Port Authority expansion. I
Well,
think that's what
my
the
deal is that
engineer.
if they want to guesstimate on, and I agree with what you said earlier, we need to analyze the methodology we're using, that we're under this agreement. Right now, and I've argued this since 2003 in the debacle of selling that treatment plant, which was a major mistake. But the issue is we were selling it based on a flow per ERU, which is 220, 250 gallons per day per ERU. That is far more than the average house uses. So consequently, you're buying in a lot more capacity than you're using. That's why I'd like to see Stephen, and really want to see it quickly. I'm not going to challenge this right now because I think Burton, and I'm hoping he checked this. But if I take that 229 and 724, add 3 zeros and divide by 365, sure like to know how that number checks with 90% of what water we bought.
Well, that would
I'd like to know if
assume-
it's accurate. I mean, we don't have anything to check any of this stuff.
Wouldn't that assume that all of the water that they're producing is being sold to us?
No,
No,
they're
it's
saying it's
half.
50%.
50%, or a little bit more than 50%.
50.12%.
412
Well, no,
to
no, this is
229.
this different story here. We don't know that all the water that they're selling to us is also being sold to somebody else that comes into that plant. They could be getting water from some other place
Well,
that
and
goes
that-
to the wastewater treatment
Right.
plant. We don't know that.
And that goes back to that earlier conversation that we had while Zinner was here, is that we need to install the equipment to capture that data. And so we can actually, do that analysis to make sure, to verify our revenues, to make sure that we're actually selling everything that
Yeah,
we're buying.
We need to know that. We need to do that check. We need to take and quickly do a check to verify if our allocation of 2015 was indeed 229 million gallons of water. Divide that by by 12, what is that, 118 million gallons a month? Are we using 18 million gallons a month of water? That number
I'm not
seems
sure.
higher than a kite to me. This is the kind of stuff I just want to check, make sure we're right. The 301 per thousand does not seem unreasonable for that size of a wastewater treatment plant. But my question comes back, is if they're only producing and only treating last year 412 million gallon, and they got a 3 MGD plant, that's equivalent to 900 million. Why are they doing it? Why are we paying for a capital expansion that we don't need? We don't have that kind of
Well,
growth.
the way that I understand it is we sold the plant to Lee County, and it's Lee County's responsibility to maintain the plant.
But they have to, it's
and
got to be
and
a
I-
fair and
I-
equitable charge and allocation of costs
And I
back to us.
believe that those are our rights within the agreement, and that's what we're trying to frame up to make sure that we have a full understanding
What I'm
of
trying to
that.
find out and want to know is how much of that plant expansion, capital improvement, are we paying for? In other words, we're buying up, we might be buying up capacity we don't need.
Yeah. That's
We
your,
need to
that's
be-
your Challenge Mahal reference.
Yeah, we can
Are we
check-
paying for something bigger than?
Yeah, we do,
what
if
we
they want to
physically
build
need?
it, be my
That's fine,
guest.
but we,
But
So
we're
that's my-
addressing that.
That's my deal. But, again, this is where, if Burton was here, I'd like to hear from him. I know that he's familiar with this stuff and he's checking it out. Alls I know is that 1 and 1 isn't equal to 2 here.
And I'm glad you brought Burton's name up. How much is he gonna charge us to update that rate study? Do we-
We need to request a proposal from him.
I
And
wanna
we want
talk to
him
him
to
about
do
some
some
other
other things
issues,
as
too.
well.
And I wanted to bring this up at this time because one of the things that we can do is we can utilize the Florida Rural Water Association, and I think that Chris was familiar with this because Joe DeCerbo talked about
Yes.
this. They do rate studies for free. You become a member, which costs you like $300 to $400 for an annual membership, and they do your rate studies, and and there's plenty of other things that you have access to as a member.
Be careful of the study that you pay $300 or $400 for.
Well,
I
this
don't
is-
think that I want to rely too much on it.
I'll take anything for free to check it and then use it as a basis.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense, but I would agree with you.
so, so Ed, with these questions, I mean, I think I would feel comfortable if you just contact.
But
Burton.
what we need is numbers from Stephen and then talk to
Well,
Burton
could-
and verify to Burton.
I would be
Burton
fine if you,
check this
if you,
stuff.
if you take this item and work with staff to, if there are any questions that you have, And I would like for us to kind of take this approach moving forward, where you've got an executive sponsor or someone on the board that's gonna go maybe, work with staff on these particular items. I think it's a good idea. I don't know that enough about it.
Yeah, they typically on this type of thing provide a lot more detail, and I'm sure somebody's got a book that's got a lot more, or a paper that's got a lot more detail than this spreadsheet showing that backs this up. That's the part I'm questioning, is
Right.
how did we get to
But
this
is there any
place?
issues with, because you're looking for a vote on this today?
The capital component is not in here. The capital component won't
Right.
be in until 2017, so we have time to figure out
So this is
how we're
pure
going to address.
operating.
This is
Yeah.
just pure
Pure
operating.
operating. Do they, as I recall on that book, or that contract that we have, that, what is it, 20 pages, Tony? At the end, there's a formula.
Yes,
The
that's
that
at
they're-
volumetric formula, yes.
Did they send us a letter, like the contract says they're supposed to do, with all those little items filled
Burton-
out?
We had, this was prepared by Burton, and
Okay.
he understands
Okay.
the
I think-
volumetric
I
formula.
think PRMG by Rob Ori did that calculation.
Right.
And then Mike Burton reviewed
Reviewed
that
it, right.
calculation
That-
using that form, I believe.
Okay, that would satisfy me then. I just want to make sure that that formula, every one of those blanks were checked out that they throw in there, because one time, I remember a couple of 5 years ago, they tried to sneak one in. And the other one is that volume. I just don't, I mean, you can play with numbers all you want, and make it come out to anything you want. That 412 million a year is a factual number, and they gotta produce how they got that.
Yeah, I guess the question would be, we don't have the following pages. It looks like there's a note 8.
There's something, yeah,
Associated
I'm
with
sure
that,
there's backup,
yeah.
yeah. So I would be more than happy to do that, because the 20,000, I think he's done a pretty good job if he has cut into that and taken it down to that number. And the 301, again, doesn't look in and of itself unreasonable for treatment plant capacity cost, operating cost.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about some of these other things and not being able to know whether or not they're correct, I just can't believe that we're talking this kind of flow. I thought we were much higher than this.
I can tell you, looking at row 12 there, the total water sales, that does, it's within 1,000 gallons of what I did when I went through every invoice for that year. It's within 1,000. So I'm
1,000 or a
showing
thousand?
1,000
These are in
Gallons.
thousands.
Gallons.
Yeah.
1,000 gallons.
So I
That's pretty-
calculated
pretty accurate.
230,849 is what going through each bill and looking at the uses for water sales.
238 million gallons.
230,849.
Okay, that's million.
So they got 229,724.
Okay, and then they
Lots.
take the 10%. Okay.
That's
Good. If you've done that, then that's a backup, then we know that the number.
But that's just,
Good
that's
for
a
us.
reconciliation from their total versus their individual invoices.
So,
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Still's gotta get matched up to what was metered.
So,
Right.
April, are
Correct.
you asking for us to approve this?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, and just the amount, just the payment, we're authorizing the payment of Lee County for the 20?
yes,
And we're also
approve the
accepting
fiscal year.
301, aren't we?
Yes.
That's what I thought. It's two components.
It's items
Yeah.
1 through 7, basically.
Yeah.
There's also further direction and authorization to staff also
Yeah.
contained.
It's other stuff we're accepting.
Okay. Anybody like to make the motion?
Based on the fact that Burton has done it, Stephen has done that one check, that at least our number is correct or close to correct, I would make the motion to go ahead with the recommendation of this, whoever put this together, April?
Yes.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll call the vote.
Aye.
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 5-0. On to item B,
God, this didn't come up very often.
Flag Football League.
This is, so right now we're in the process of getting the leagues all on the same contractual agreement. So this is exactly the same agreement that that I brought before you to approve for GSA. I basically used the templates that Tony had revised for us. Tony has reviewed this. We discussed it, and I clarified the significant revisions of the agreement. And what we are doing is extending these agreements instead of doing it from season to season, because I think they have 2 seasons a year, just extending it across the year to be sure that we're not, missing something administratively throughout the year.
Any
Great.
questions?
I'll make the motion, but I'll preface it with the fact that I'll accept it this time as a newcomer, but number 113F will be up for discussion later on at a later date.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call the vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. All right, moving right along. Storm cleaning in Stony Brook and Silver Lakes. This is,
Okay, so this one, for budget purposes is a little tricky. We had brought to you, I guess it was one, I didn't include, did I include the original one that we did? Several months ago, we brought another PO to you for $150,000. And apparently, the engineers have created, this overall plan of the district for this pipe cleaning. And so finally, we're getting to it. And unfortunately, I wasn't aware of that huge plan when we developed the budget. And so this item specifically is not in the budget, so we're gonna have to do some really deep grooming on our first quarter budget, for several things. And this is part of that, but this is the next purchase order to finish up the large pipes in Stony Brook and Silver Lakes. And it's Brad Rogers that's doing the cleaning.
Margaret, question?
go ahead.
This isn't scratching the surface of the problems we've got.
No.
Not scratching the surfaces. This is just Silver Lakes and Stony Brook. We have all of the rest of Gateway that has equal, well, I don't want to say equal. Stony Brook's a mess. But we have problems. Where's the money coming from? By the time you're done with this, you've spent out 150, correct, Danny? Probably gonna do another 150, then that doesn't even do the small pipe,
Right.
which is about another 150, 180. And we're doing 20% maybe at most of the entire community?
Well, this one will be the last one that we bring forward to you for 2017 until we regroup on the capital plan. Because clearly, this is one of those areas that when we do the rate study, we want to expand our rate study for just the utilities and actually look at a drainage stormwater rate. I believe
That's
that
what I would like to see.
I believe that would, we have such a burden, we probably have just as much of a burden on the ponds and the drainage as the utility. Other municipalities do it.
Yep.
However, with that said, it's not just, oh, well, we'll create this fee for our stormwater. I think it's better for your residents because it defines exactly what that pot of money is to be used for. But also, at the same time, when we do that, we're pulling a significant amount of your assessment out of the general fund. So you'd have your enterprise operating on its own, you'd have your storm rate kind of operating on its own. I don't think that you always capture 100%. It depends on your level of service that you want to provide in that fee. But then that kind of leaves your general fund with not very much in it, very bare bones. So when we move forward and do these rate studies, we're also going to have to, I would deeply consider doing a model on the general fund to see what's going to be left in there and do that assessment as well, because it's going to be, typically there, there's a chunk of budget that you'd be just deferring in that rate from your general fund assessment to the storm rate assessment. So it's not going to be as simple as just, well, let's go out and hire a consultant to do this fee. It's going to affect the organization as a whole.
Margaret, another question for Danny. Danny, will SRF pay for operational on this?
I don't think so.
On operational? No,
Yeah,
not that I'm
cleaning of the
aware
storm sewers?
Yeah, if you were to convince them it was a capital project, but we can check into it.
Because, when we do typical sewer II rehabilitation projects, it's paid for with grant money.
Yeah, I mean, difference there is you're dealing with, usually when you're dealing with sanitary sewer evaluations and that sort of thing, it's resulting in some repair
Difference,
work and,
okay.
yeah. I mean, we can ask them. We can
But
certainly
the
ask
issue
'em.
is that we're not gonna do this overnight, but it's gonna have to be staggered out over quite a few years and come up with an idea what the cost is. But if you're looking at $450,000 for 20% of the community, it's easy to multiply
Well,
times 5.
And can't we, if we have some data to support it, say that, the money that we're gonna spend on the pond rehabilitation, you know, could incur some, you know, issues if these other, you know, if these other things aren't addressed, as far as the pipe cleaning. Maybe we can look at the results and what our findings, if we don't do these things, this project could be in jeopardy, down the road.
Question.
Yes.
Is this being charged to Stony Brook Fund?
No, we pay into the 001 fund for this type of thing. We pay the full
This is
amount
general
into
fund.
the 001 general.
It's all
fund.
general
Yeah,
fund
that's the
work.
general fund
That's what I
capital.
wanna separate it
Oh,
out
wait,
into utility.
Time out, guys. It says 300. Isn't 300 Stony Brook?
No, 004 is Stony Brook.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Good question.
It's capital, I'm sorry.
So storm sewer, same everybody's.
Yes, Kathy.
I have a question. Sorry.
It's okay.
You're requesting 150,000, and all of Silver Lakes is done, and 50% of Stony Brook, and you had 150,000. Why do you need 150,000 just to do half of 50% of Stony Brook? That seems to be, doesn't balance out.
Much bigger.
Have you read Tyler's memo as far as what we're doing?
No, but I mean, this work dates back,
Much more quantity.
what, I think 2.5, 3 years now. The work in Stony Brook and in Silver Lakes, the work that was quantified was actually from the inspections that were done previously. Yeah, some of the work has been done, but for little history, you know, when Morris Riley was doing work in Greater Gateway, they did inspections through probably about 80, 85, maybe 90% of Gateway. Part of that was within the area where the road turnover is at. A bid package was put together for that, and a bid package was put together for Silver Lakes and Stony Brook because the worst areas were within but those communities as well as what was within the roads. So a bid package was put out. It bid twice, and I think in each case we got one vendor. So in the interest of moving forward, because we had to deal with the road turnover portion, a contract was given, I think, for the smaller pipe, and I think that's what MedTower did, I believe. So this was that larger pipe. I mean, if you look at, and I think it's in the packet of the work that's already been done by Extreme, I mean, you had some pipes that are nearly completely clogged. So this is just continuing with those worst areas. And we're in the situation that we're in because of a lack of, well, I mean, part of it is location and how the pipes were installed and possibly material that was left in there, but also there's, you know, been a lack of maintenance over the last, in some cases, 10, 15 plus years.
And
So
I
it's-
think part of the first 150,000 was just cleaning. This second includes repair work that they found that needed to be done.
And we've added the head walls and the structures and stuff, they're hitting those while they're out there as well.
Right. So this is work that we've been trying to do for, you know, for a couple of years.
We're not, bi-
Follow-up question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, as long as Danny's standing there.
Yep.
So,
Must be.
on page A97, okay, what you're saying then, the damage here, the leak, possible leaks will be corrected with the second 150,000? Is that what you're saying?
They have several repairs.
Yeah, I know, but I'm looking at the two leaks that are on page 97.
What page is 97? I'm not looking.
Should be 97 at the end.
That would be big.
Like-
Yeah,
That
right there.
one.
It says the large gap with the leak and then also the possible leaks.
Yeah.
Those are gonna be corrected?
If that work hasn't been completed already with the work, then, yeah, that would be part of the work that would be
So
done,
you're saying then the other,
as I understand.
50% of Stony Brook, it's gonna cost 150,000, even though 50% and Silver Lakes was 150,000?
Well, I think is it a not to exceed of 150,000?
It's not to exceed.
So, yeah, it's not, I don't think
Because
there's an actual.
because this is the large pipe and there's a dive crew, and they don't know what they're gonna find when they get in there. We're basically just paying them, you know, by the hour, by the week.
A day rate, a unit
Right, a
cost.
day rate.
So it's just a not to exceed based on the work that's been done and trying to quantify as best as you can.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
Nope.
Believe, did we get a motion? Do we have a motion yet?
No.
No.
Okay, all right. Entertain a motion?
So, as soon as I can get to it, I'll make the motion to approve the expenditure of the not to exceed of $150,000 for storm pipe cleaning in Stony Brook and Silver Lake Phase 2.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll call the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
I'm impressed that you were able to read all of this stuff.
That one went under her, under her house.
Oh.
It went under
That's
her
why
house.
I'd like it printed out.
Really? I was gonna say, no, yeah.
Okay, staff reports, district council.
Just brief, I'd like to get authorization for the chair or vice chairman to sign any necessary agreements after my review for obtaining the requisite performance assurance bond for the road turnover with Lee County. I'm going through the various documents, and I've had the surveys, and I've been working with the title company on the title commitment. Lee County requires a performance assurance bond in the amount of 10% of the construction cost for a 2-year period in case there are any defects in the construction. And I've been working with the surety company to get that, and hopefully we should have that in the next couple of days. And I just need the authorization of the chair or vice chair to sign that.
Can we require those of WCI and Lennar and all of the?
We can adopt a rule to do that prospectively, yes.
You'll look into that for us?
Yes, sir, we can, yeah, prospectively, yeah.
So do you need a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. Any questions? I'll call the vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And on that note, too, I had met with John Ferdima, Robert from the county attorney's office, Robert Clemens, and Sheila Bedwell, who look at the title work and with Lee County, and went over some of the forms, the documents, and materials necessary, and I'm shooting for next Tuesday to get the materials submitted. The form of the deed, getting revised title commitment, and there was, Ed Cecil was there to keep kicking me and took us. And the game plan right now is that the county commission may not have any meetings in January, was what John Ferdima indicated. Right now, they've moved their calendar around, so they may have one meeting, and they were even thinking of canceling that one meeting. He wasn't sure, so it may not be until February before this gets to the board, but I'll let you know once it's submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
District engineer, do you have anything for us?
I have nothing at this meeting. If you have any questions, I do know, I do want to come back at the next meeting and follow up on the Lake Bank program and hopefully get some direction, clarification on how we want to, put it to rest on how we want to proceed with not only, bidding out of the lakes, but also with the services during construction, because there's obviously different ways to go. And we talked at the last meeting regarding roles and different things. So I do want to come back and present and get some direction.
Are we doing work on 104? Not yet.
No, not yet.
When do we anticipate at least finishing that lake?
I thought we were talking around after the first of the year
Okay.
when we were talking to Brad last. So.
Danny, are the plans done for the 5 ponds?
The plans are done. Tyler was finalizing the specs, and those should be going to DEP probably. Well, today's Thursday. I think he was planning on sending them tomorrow to DEP. So then we'll send them out.
Will we get a
to-
set here also?
Yeah.
Okay, then are you gonna talk anything about the grants administration or what I call SRF administration?
Well, we
You gonna
talked
talk
about
about
it
that
at the
at all?
last meeting, and I think what I'd like to do is just circle back to that at the next meeting and kind of regurgitate all of that, because there are definitely things that your contractor is required to do. There are things that the inspector is required to do. There are things that that Stephen will be required to do, and there are things that we will do.
You talking about the grant manager?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of experience with that, so I'll certainly help, Gateway through the process.
Would we have to pay for that, or would that come out of SRF?
You can have it as a line item on your SRF, so if we hired a grant administrator or a loan administrator, which is what seems to have been recommended by others, and I know that's all we did up north,
Yeah.
probably gonna be looking at maybe a little less than couple of grand a month. And if we have a 5-month project now.
And if it, you know, saves other billing time and effort.
If you look at some of the tasks that we have to do, we haven't got anybody here to do that stuff.
Yeah.
We haven't got time.
Yep, I think it's a good idea to bring that back, and I don't have a problem with it.
And then the other ones, do you have to have a resolution, new resolution on designated representative for SRF?
A designated representative.
Did you guys pass a designated representative resolution when you did the loan application?
As far as who-
Signatory.
Oh,
Will we have to modify that?
yeah, that would have to be modified because it was the chairman. And of course, there's two parts to it. There's the designee from the applicant side, and there's also when you actually get into the project and you're doing your disbursements, you'll have to have the engineer certification, which I believe Tyler is signing and sealing the documents. So Tyler would sign and seal that. So. And the documents that he's preparing and to send are as the board previously approved, and that's just the residential side. We talked about the alternative to include the non-residential side, as well as looking at the option of taking that residential side and not doing full. But the plans that'll go to DEP are as it was originally planned and designed. That shouldn't affect anything as far as SRF is concerned. We've already verified that with them. If we add in if we change the method or if we add in the non-residential side.
No, the original, the past boards have adopted the position that we went with a pre-qualified vendor, correct?
Yes.
So we're only going to be sending these plans out to 4 contractors at this point in time.
Yes.
And you're setting the contract documents up that each vendor can vote or bid on each of the ponds?
Well, I want to discuss that at the next meeting because there's
We need to have an answer to that before you can submit plans and specs.
no to DEP. No,
They don't get specs?
they get specs, but
So
they
no
don't.
bid schedule or any of that?
No, they won't see they're not looking at the bid schedule. They're just looking at the technical side of things and to make sure that their supplemental conditions are in the documents.
But
So-
we will need to approve how we proceed on that bid process as a collective.
Yes, and what I'll do is I'll bring back, pros and cons to each way. I mean, there's definitely advantages to both, and there's definitely disadvantages to both ways.
And you're also setting it up on the material vendor for the purchase of the Armamax and/or the other material?
Yeah, and for
Separately bid?
Separately bid, and I mean, again, advantages, disadvantages to that. The advantage, of course, is that you could take advantage of the tax deduction if you purchase that material separately in-house, and you can have that material here. The disadvantage of that is you don't really have the staff to add on much more burden, which is also part of the same thing if you bid out the project to 4 different vendors. The advantage to that is you get better pricing, but now you could possibly get 4 different, contracts. So there's pros and cons to both, and I'd like to discuss that in a little bit more detail at the next meeting.
And it would be nice if if there is a recommendation from you or in staff on which direction to go.
I'll make a recommendation. Just there's not necessarily one way that is
Yeah, no, I
better than
understand that,
another.
but,
And you can use logic and pick what is logically the best method, and it can still bite you in the butt.
no, I understand that about it.
I talked to Tyler and then talked to the supplier, and at first, when April brought it up, I was a little bit shaky on it, but I'm now convinced that you're looking at easily $225,000 to $250,000 savings,
Well, if
Big time
you
savings.
if you bid out
Material bulk.
material,
Yeah,
bulk.
yeah.
if you
That's
if you
big.
bid out all of the lakes as one,
All
and then
38,000 square yards at once.
at once, if you bid if you bid it out to one vendor for the lake, for the improvement part, the construction side, that person would have the same leverage that you would on buying the bulk, as opposed to doing them individually. So
But
there
he's
is.
gonna mark it up 25% too.
He's gonna definitely mark it up. He will get it better, because if you buy per lake, you buy that smaller quantity, you're gonna pay a higher price anyhow. But yeah, the vendor will.
And we don't know the answer to that because we don't know who's gonna bid what.
Yeah, so
Right.
you're gonna come back with all these.
We'll look forward to you bringing that back.
I know you want to kick me out. I'm good.
Oh, one more thing. You guys got everything you need for the storage
Yes,
options?
we're actually, it's in CAD, that we're laying out, options with that, so, hopefully we bring that back
Okay.
as well. But I don't wanna burden us with a lot of things at the next meeting, cause I think this topic alone on the lake banks will,
Take some
take some time, and I definitely wanna spend that time on it,
Okay.
so.
Thank you, Danny. Operations Manager.
I apologize for not having this on the agenda, but the last couple of weeks have just been, we have been crazy here. So I will run through my last report and give you some updates. The website development, we meet every week, every Monday at 2 with the website developer. Today we received the link to the development site. So we were able to see our homepage now. We haven't nailed down the colors yet, but we definitely have been working on it. We have developed the homepage. We have developed what an internal page is going to look like. We've developed what the residents page is going to look like, and we're developing some menus right now. Diane and I sit in on the meetings, and then we kind of, how we did it this week is we kind of grouped together on getting some direction with our homework assignment, and then Diane kind of runs with it. So she's been spending a lot of time and a lot of work working on this stuff, but we're really happy with the progress so far. I think the developer, I think Harrison would like to see it done in 6 weeks. I'll be happy if we can get it launched by February 1, just based on our current workload and the holidays coming up. But we are making progress, and it is going well. Also, the Fun Park initiative, I should have something to you on the 15th, and that will be the estimated proposals that we have for the light installation, the technology that we have spoke about, and also a high proposal amount for security. The security is kind of turning into what I'm going to present to you is options, Lee County Sheriff's Office versus a private entity, because there's definitely some pros and cons there. And also on that same proposal, I will bring to you the pros and cons of a towing policy. So that will probably, it may not be an approval to proceed, but it will definitely be, we'll be able to get some direction on whether or not we want to actually proceed with that endeavor.
And are you talking about security just for the fun park, or a holistic solution? When you're talking about, because sheriff, that's meeting meeting a need.
I really don't think that we benefit ourselves by having someone just parked at the fun park.
So my question is,
Yeah, so.
is this your other option, your security option, is it just to solve the fun part, or is it maybe a bigger?
I think we should, I personally think that we get more bang for our buck by doing kind of the rounds, the roving patrol of what the Lee County Sheriff's Office is doing now. They hit.
And that's fine, you don't have to go too much deeper, I just wanted to get that point of clarification, because I would say yes, I would advise you to look bigger than just the fun part, which you are, so
Yep.
that's great.
The holiday event is tomorrow. Staff has been working very hard. It's getting everything ready. I hope it's not going to rain. I think we got all the rain out of our system this week. So I hope to see everyone there for that.
Starts at 6 p.m., correct?
6 p.m., yes. Dog park.
Is that the dog park?
You get locked in.
If it doesn't go well,
Is that what
yes.
your invitation said?
If it doesn't go well, yes, we'll be locked in the dog park. So I assure you that staff has been working so much on trying to get the dog park issue resolved. We have had so many complications. We have looked at, okay, well, maybe we selected the wrong equipment, but the equipment at the pool facility is working fine.
And it's the same,
It's
exact
the same
stuff.
equipment. I have concluded in the error of my ways, as far as going out for a proposal. We did go with ADT. They were our existing, provider. And of course, they came in, the other providers were way off the charts as far as dollars. However, what we didn't know is ADT was just recently purchased, and so they've been having some corporate growing pains that we've been trapped up in as far as ordering parts. They also have their sub, the installer is from out of town. There's not a local installer, so when you have problems, it's taking a while to coordinate the purchase of the equipment that we need with the local installer, and then it's further delayed when they ship the wrong equipment. We have the gentleman that was here, he brought up a very excellent idea, which we implemented, I believe, that day. I think we happened to be at Home Depot, and we implemented that day, and that is when the power is out and there is no power to the gate, we're securing it with a combination lock, and we'll leave a sign on the gate so they can come up and contact us and get the combination code. No different than our paid users of the storage facility having the combination code to the gate. So that was an excellent solution that a resident came up with and that we implemented. However, the very next day we had a new problem, and the unit is powered, but the exit button has failed, and so we still ended up with a resident locked in the dog park. So because of the safety issue, we have closed the dog park until further notice, because we cannot have people getting locked in the dog park. Also, we had a terrible tragedy. Staff had been calling our sales rep, our points of contact, and calling and no return. And then finally the mailbox was full, and so we contacted corporate, and we found out that our sales rep passed away. So we have had every obstacle and every hurdle with this dog park resolution. We've went the distance, and we've installed grounding rods. We've installed some surge protection, but right now we haven't had it fully functional for any length of time to actually switch over. We're going to pursue another provider, another installer for that equipment to see if that doesn't work better. We're at our wit's end with the current team that we have. So we're going to go that route, and we're also going to order some additional backup equipment so we have this stuff on hand. Don't worry about getting the equipment, just come in and install it. So we have all of those things in place, and we're rolling with that. We just have to get past this hurdle of getting the current equipment completely installed and operating appropriately. And then we've also found out that they sent us the wrong cards. So we were getting down to the bottom of our existing card box, and to be preventative, we went ahead, and when we got the equipment, we went ahead and ordered new cards. So this week we dipped into, or I guess it was last week, we dipped into the new card box, and it's got the wrong facility code on it. So we can't use those cards. So if there hasn't been anything yet, I can't imagine what else could possibly come up. So because we've had the button failure, unfortunately we had to close the dog park until further notice.
Yeah, and you can't just open it up to anyone, because you have to have
And we're all,
fact or whatever.
right,
the checks on the
exactly.
dog. Yeah, you can't.
Exactly.
I had a question. So when people sign up, because they have to sign up, they have to show whatever, and you get your card. What information do we capture? Do we capture email or cell phone number? Is there any way, to the gentleman's point earlier, to maybe put out an alert, an email or text alert, just in the event of something happening?
I'm not real sure what data
Okay.
we
If
have.
you could just look up on that and just see if there's a communication option.
Have you put it on the web, or on our website, that the dog park is closed?
So, one of the things that we need to get better at, as we all know, is the communication. So right now we can't post alerts to the website, but we could be posting some alerts to Facebook. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to resolve the issue of a resident loading up the dog and driving over to the dog park and finding the gate closed, unless they check Facebook really routinely.
You can probably send emails out to, like the management companies for the HOAs and HOA presidents, because we have the ability to get that information out within our communities. So you may not get every resident, but you might get enough of them that the word gets around.
Okay, I'm definitely going to see if we're capturing the emails for the residents that are paying.
And I would even have in the application email,
Mm-hmm.
telephone number,
Well, we have
preference,
to be careful.
text,
We have
email.
to be careful about that, because then it becomes public record.
Well, you just have a
All of it is,
display.
yes.
Yeah, we got that
Yeah.
problem here.
I think
You have a
I think
disclosure.
we've gone beyond that now. I don't really see a way around that, as long as we're communicating to them that it may be subject, that's their option to
Right.
communicate. If this is our means of communication, we can blast an email, and you choose not to, I don't know what
Right.
else we can do
I
for
understand.
those customers, so. But, definitely, I do not know if we're collecting that data, and that would be an excellent thing to add, so. We could definitely collect it probably fairly quickly.
Anything else?
Let's see. Lake 128, staff has been working, with, extreme divers. They're going over there and they're trying to figure out a way to find the leak, the erosion that's happening on the new repair over there. That has been active, this last week. And the sports complex, we are currently, preparing a proposal to bring before you for the lightning detection system. I just want to make sure that I vet that to Tony, and we have a concurrence as far as any additional liability, or whether it is additional liability or not for that type of equipment.
Okay.
Margaret, I got a couple for April.
Go ahead.
Our HOA got a letter from, I think, the CDD notifying us that one of our own is in violation, and I think it even came from South Florida Water Management District through here, that one of our people are, let's say, ignoring the application of irrigation water and the restrictions.
We received the email. I just forwarded it to you because in case it was in your area.
Well, my thing is that I think that we need to make sure, it shouldn't be coming from the HOA because we don't have a dog in that deal. We have no covenant, no authority whatsoever. I think we need to be more proactive here, and I mean, if you drive around, all somebody does have to do is drive in my neighborhood, and they will, South Florida thought that one was bad. They ain't seen nothing. People are watering every single
I don't think it was
day.
South Florida Water Management. I think one
It
of
was
your.
a neighbor.
Right, one of your residents reported it to South Florida Water
Well, I've
Management
got a
District.
Hatfield and McCoy over there in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
But that's what that was.
We-
And they
we
turned
don't
them in.
enforce
But the
that.
issue is that it's not just that one person. It's all over. People are watering more than the 2 days a week.
Right.
And then Chris is gonna talk about it in a minute, but we need to get a word out to the residents. I'm telling everybody in our community, we sent out the notice today. Stop irrigating between 12 and 5 in the morning, which is what I've all been told for years.
Yeah.
Water in the daytime, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock.
But that's
Uh,
outside of the watering times for the Lee County ordinance.
Well, then we're gonna spend one heck of a lot of money then replacing
Right.
our irrigation system.
So what
then.
we're currently doing is we've met with Mainscape. Specifically, we were addressing the down irrigation pump and the Stony Brook issues. But part of that, what we're working on now and working through legal, we've got some advice from legal on how to pursue this, is to potentially reach out to the local municipalities and see how they monitor their water restrictions and what they utilize. Right now, our landscapers seem to think that the same schedule that the city of Cape Coral uses would fit us better to resolve some of the immediate issues that we're having. However, that's an adoption of a policy, so we have to go through the right channels for that. And also, we have to understand that if we're going to adopt our own water restrictions and set those water restrictions, we have to be prepared to enforce those water restrictions. And currently, with the current staffing that we have as far as inspection, to be able to provide an equitable system for that, and then addressing whether or not we want the ability to fine. So
We do not have the ability to
don't
define.
care.
Right.
Yeah, April had raised it initially, I think today was the email.
Yeah.
I guess a couple thoughts in the interim. Lee County Code Enforcement, I believe, enforces the water restrictions. That's one approach, is to contact Lee County Code Enforcement on a routine basis, and that's a phone call, probably. Secondly, part of the research that began today, based upon initial conversation or communication, was the ability to have, in our rules, prohibiting, having our own emergency water restriction timeframes and having a step rate or a separate commodity rate for those instances and those individuals when they water outside our
Outside
restrictions.
limit. And how
So
would-
that's one thing I'll be looking at and being back comprehensively, working with April and Chris and Danny.
Well, the other big problem we've got is we've got one heck of a lot of common area in these communities. That's part of your problem. With the combination of the CDD and all of our HOA's common areas, I mean, I've got 58 meters in my HOA alone. So, I mean, it's a lot of water that we're putting on these road rights away. And so consequently, anybody that's in a residential deal, and like you guys at Stony Brook, which are up at the north end, they're just in the pressure
Well, let
to
me
do
tell
it
you
and then
something,
throw
too.
in the problems that we're having with the pumps.
And it's not only the common areas, but it's how those common areas are watered. And I've seen it throughout this community. We've got, I don't know what type of sprayer it is, but it's spraying 20 feet. Half of it's going over a sidewalk, the other is going into a pond. It's just if you had a just different type of head,
Rotors.
or someone to come in and assess, different types of heads that are more efficient that still hit the area. So there's a lot to be done. And again, irrigation's a big issue with us, but with the Zinner, I thought they said something about isn't there ways that we can monitor or get reports?
That's what I was gonna ask the same thing, like, I thought each and every
Time frame.
individual household, you'd be able to look and see how many people are, overwatering.
And who's watering during time
What
frames that
times?
are outside of the designated, and you could, capture it, shoot an email, you're in violation,
Step
and then,
rate.
or hand it over, if they don't comply to, a code enforcement.
Or an alternative, again, looking at the ability
Or
to
bill
go
them
to a
differently.
different rate.
Yeah, and that's what will get people to stop.
Right.
Or they cover their costs from going outside of regulation.
So part of that is what Zinner had referenced, is once we get beyond our issues and we have some steady data, that we can actually do some really effective data analysis with, then we can start doing those things. But at the same time, we have to make sure that when we set up a procedure that's going to impact our residents, that we set up a procedure where we're doing it routinely, we're providing any of those communications equitable, and make sure that we're not just, picking, oh, well, today I feel like making some phone calls and telling people that they're watering out of their zones. And also, if we're going to spend the time evaluating that data, what teeth do we have to enforce it, or like Tony said, to, assess something through our rate structure. So
That's billing codes in the system.
Well,
That's probably the best solution.
but our rates are set by rulemaking, and so
We have
it's,
to amend the rules to
Right.
do that, but again,
No,
that just,
But that's the easiest solution as opposed to straining staff and, yeah.
kick it to commodity rate.
District manager. Anything?
No, I don't have anything.
That leaves us our utility manager report. Hello, Chris. You're a patient man,
I'm
right?
still smiling, but I got a bunch of bad news for you. Well, no, it's getting better quickly, but I'll leave most of the report not address it unless you have some questions. The other things are moving along, but we had a real meltdown, I'll call it, in the irrigation system in the back. And just to give you a quick background, the system out there has 5 pumps. One of them is what they call a jockey pump. So basically 4 pumps operating in the jockey. The jockey's a 50 horsepower pump, the other ones are 150. The only thing the jockey does is keeps pressure in the system, and then the drive system calls for pumps as the pressure needs to be increased by the demand. So the week before Thanksgiving, we had a little problem in the control system, and a seal on one of the pumps go bad. And so it's like, okay, we're gonna be down 2 pumps now because one of them is just totally trashed. And to give it from a little more historical perspective, when I looked at it 2 years ago, the board spent about $130,000 buying that jockey pump and the control system for it, the programmable logic, to put all that together. So, and they did have a note in the budget about we should be buying 2 pumps a year, but there was never any money put in the budget for those pumps. But we had the one pump go down. It's like, all right, we're struggling. Then a second one, the seals went bad on it, and it started leaking real bad. So it was like, as soon as we got the first pump back the week before, then we took that one out last week, and it's scheduled to be delivered tomorrow. And it's actually installed right now. They're just bringing the last pieces in the laser alignment to do it. So then we'll be back up to 3 full-speed pumps and in good shape. But at the same time, we had a problem with our logic controller, that it was shutting and tripping one of the pumps off. So, we're running along 80, 90 pounds, and all of a sudden it drops down to 10 or 15. We're like, what's going on? And And we had BCI come out 2 different times, and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, they had a 2-person team out there, went through everything. I walked out, the guy said, we ran 20 scenarios, it's all fixed, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, you're leaving for the holiday, what do you mean, don't worry? He goes, so I came in Thursday morning, and the pumps had tripped at 6 o'clock. So when we look back on the record, sometime between, it was midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning, that pump was tripping, no explanation, no overheating, just out of the blue. So what we did over the weekend is just came in at 2 in the morning and at 7 in the morning, Dan and I, and if it was tripped, we'd turn it back on manually to make it run. So BCI came back out early this week, and we can't fix it, we don't know what it is. And so we brought a drive guy out. He was out here Tuesday working on it. He goes, think I got it? Don't worry about it. Okay. Went out there Wednesday morning, 6:30, tripped. So he's coming back tomorrow, and he thinks he has the solution, and the new pump's going in, and so we hope to have the solution and have it all up. However, in the last 2 weeks, we have gotten a number of complaints from residents and snowbirds coming back if the pressure wasn't right, because so many people water between midnight and 5. You know, sprinklers aren't coming up, and of course no rain for 40 days. That didn't help. And several of the people that called that were having stressed lawns, I said, look, just turn your clock to 7 to 9 in the morning, or sometime between 5 and 8 in the evening. And I said, and just run it. And I said, and add 5 minutes to your zones, because of the drought, the 15 minutes you've been running probably isn't adequate. So it caused a lot of public relation problems and consternation. I've talked to the people, and we sent out information to the homeowner association, property owners, and working with Mainscape, and I'm hoping that we have this problem resolved tomorrow for the most part. But to put it in perspective, I walked back there a few minutes ago, and 1,100 gallons a minute were going out of the system.
Wow.
Which, okay, 1,100 gallons a minute, 1.4 million gallons a day. You know, and if I go there when we were checking the system 11 or 12 o'clock at night, 3,800 gallons a minute, 3,900 gallons a minute. I mean, the water is rolling out of there. So, and the one thing I was going to bring up to you, and I'll be back with an agenda item, is we'll have those 2 pumps that are rebuilt that have been done in the last 2 weeks, and another one which is one of the original pumps purchased in 2005. But one pump back there is total scrap.
Is the jockey pump still running?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it'll run and
So you got your 3 pump, and then you got your jockey.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And so I wanted to come in for emergency, because we don't have it in the budget, is get one brand new pump to replace that one that's scrapped. I mean, there's no way you can fix this. The shaft's broken, and when I'm talking about buying a pump, $34,000. So,
Well,
but
we gotta have it.
with the amount of money that the people spend on their landscaping, we do have to have it. But, and another thing we looked at too is alternative irrigation schedules, maybe going to 7 days a week, and getting the HOAs and looking at the demand in each one of the master meters, and just try to balance it out so that you're spreading that out 7 days a week instead of 4. But as much water as we pump out, they will use and use more of it.
Yeah.
And I've apologized for it, and I would have put some blurbs out earlier, but when someone comes and tells you, hey, it's fixed, don't worry about it, the next morning, 2 days later, we got it, 15 scenarios. You walk in there at 6 in the morning, and the pressure's at 30 pounds.
Well, thank you for coming in at odd
Scenario
hours
16.
to check it.
Well, we're gonna do it again tonight, because we're seeing it shifted a little bit, but we think it's a thermal coupling in the pump that we have out. This control system's like calling for it, it's not there, and it's doing something even the programmers don't know.
Thank you, I know you're staying on top of that.
Yeah, well-
Do you have anything else?
No, everything else is running pretty good.
Sure.
Thank you, Chris. That brings us to supervisor comments. I'll start with our newest members.
Let's start at the
Oh, okay.
senior end, and then we'll
The
work down this way.
You know,
senior
Gary used to
end.
pull that same thing, start down here so he
Yeah,
can do the
let you guys
anchor.
go,
and-
'cause
Yeah.
mine's gonna take a while.
So I just have really just one thing. I'm going to either send a summary out, or maybe because we got such a heavy board meeting next, I might just send something to April to have her send out. But I was approached with the, I guess, a notification or a highlight that it's in the time period right now where Lee County is looking at where to put the next high school. Gateway is under consideration in Alva. So there's one individual who is involved in the board on this particular selection, either on the committee or something along those lines. And what they're kind of looking for is to get a pulse within our community on, you know, really, ideally what the selection committee would like to have is a letter of, you know, either recommendation or something from the district, because there'll be individuals that are gonna be for and against. What I'd like to do is just send the board members some information on what's happening, and even maybe with an idea that we would, maybe have staff work with, you know, one or two of these individuals to get a pulse check of the community. I mean, it would be my, you know, with 4 kids, it would be, you know, my recommendation for us to put together a formal board recommendation. And I'm hoping it would be positive, but in order to do that, I think we really need to get a pulse check of the community as a whole. That would help us.
Lee County School District already owns that.
Yeah, they do.
50
And they've
acres.
owned it since 2004, so,
They own the property in Alpha too.
yeah. So really, my update is I want to make sure the board's informed on what's going on, and then we can make a decision on if we would formally make a statement either way, and if there is some involvement that we want to have as a board to help to capture some of this information, whether it's, you know, just working with a couple individuals who are already involved. I don't know if it's town halls or polls or whatever, but I'll send the information out and then we can figure out what next steps are.
Mr. Fox?
I just wanted to congratulate our new members and our re-elected member, and I know that we're gonna make a lot of progress this coming year.
It's gonna be.
Congratulations to you.
It's gonna
Yes,
be
we
an
will.
interesting year. It will be. Ms. Flair?
I'm gonna hold off on any suggestions until next year.
Okay.
So I have a little bit more flow into it.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey, and before you go, real quick, we are,
Your
just-
time's up.
Bill used to give me a little extra time. I just want to remind the board too that next week on the agenda, we do have that hour at the front of the meeting for our work session, work group. I'm still not sure exactly what to call it.
Work session.
Work session.
Work session.
And we'll be having some open forums to discuss some things too.
Yep. Thank you for reminding us
Yep.
of that. But our meeting's still starting at
Yep.
3.
No.
Yes.
Yes, 3. We'll use the first hour for our open discussion to focus on some items.
Okay.
Do we have an agenda for that meeting? Because I've got a lot of items I would like to put on
Yeah,
it.
so ideally, we're gonna look at how we run the meetings. You know, do we need to shuffle some things around? At least this
I'm
is my.
assuming that's organizational structure?
Yes.
That's not going to be addressed at all tonight?
No.
Okay, so is that on, I'd
That'll
like
be
to see
on the
that on an
15th.
agenda.
Organizational will be on the,
Yeah,
on the
well,
15th.
well, I've got a lot of ideas that I'm not gonna sit here and go through all these right now, but how do I get them to everybody?
Well, here's what,
Give them to April.
well, but here's some, an opportunity too. The reason why I wanted to have this work session is because, you know, again, as a collective group, if there are things that we wanna kinda toss around, open discussion without any approval or whatever, we can have that opportunity for us to have some open discussion. One of the things that, you know, the 3 items that I wanted to have on the agenda is just how we run the meetings. Are there,
Yes.
you know, are there some opportunities to move some
One
things
on.
around? And I think I've heard some feedback from other individuals. So we'll spend a few minutes talking about the agenda. Can we move some things around to be more efficient and more effective? 2 is around kind of our goals. What are our district goals, our priorities, just to start the conversation so we're all on the same page. As we move forward, we're speaking kind of with one voice. At least we're gonna talk about, how, you know, are there certain things in our meetings, guiding principles, things, you know, behavior, interaction that we wanna have. So those are kind of the items that I thought we would address. And then Ed, if you had some things that, or
So
anyone had
get
some
them to
items.
April, and she'll disperse them then.
Yeah, and we can even have open discussion.
Yeah, and part of, possibly a suggestion could be from a format. The first hour would be this dialogue workshop without taking formal action, but on the formal agenda thereafter, the meeting agenda, you can have an agenda item saying follow-up action from workshop or from working session. So that if you want to then implement some of the items you talked about at the workshop session, you could then adopt those or give direction at the regular meeting.
Yeah.
So that could be a
Things we
separate
talked about.
agenda.
We
That's
want to
what-
assign this to staff to begin to have conversation, or, I mean, it's my idea that we would have at least one of these sessions once a month for an hour, so we can have a.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen with other governmental bodies where they have a work session and then you may not wanna do it this way, 2 or 3 days later, they have the regular board meeting or council meeting.
But we can
And
talk
they-
about options for that.
Yeah,
That'll be part of next.
The other one I wanna do is get us involved in that FASD, and there's a conference coming up here in Fort Myers, in late January. The Florida Association of Special Districts,
Mhm.
we gotta get involved in that.
Okay,
We've
who
gotta
wants
get
to go?
involved in
Cause
that.
we've already, we're already a member of FASD.
We are?
Yep, we're already a member of
We are a
FASD,
member.
and I've already got staff signed up for that, so who of you would like to go
I'm
to the
definitely
January
interested.
meeting? Okay.
Definitely interested.
What date is it? Send me the information on the
January
date.
29th.
And then we'll
Yeah.
plow back to you if we can
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah.
So who do we
Send me
have
that.
from staff going?
Leslie, Chris, and myself.
You, Chris, and Leslie. Perfect.
The other one is that we had the report from Zenner last week, or last meeting. The issue is where are we at on processing or retaining, further retainage of that money relative to damages?
what happened was a letter was sent, or an email sent to Ford Line on the 22nd, I believe. 23rd, 22nd, saying that that request for the retainage did not comply with, was not a proper invoice under the contract. Then Zenner sent back an email saying, to Tyler, saying, is this what you want us to submit? I need to have some conversations with Tyler and with April about the response to that, because it's not our job to babysit the vendor. You know, our response is, here's what you need to do under the contract, and for them to come back and say, is this what you want us to do?
And that's my point.
It's not-
We did, this was a turnkey contract, guys. A turnkey contract that had major issues relative to them and contract compliance. Us doing work for them is just absolutely uncalled for. We had no responsibility whatsoever to do it, and I interviewed staff and accounted for a lot of man-hours. A lot of man-hours that Zenner should have been in here doing it themselves.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I want to have that conversation with everyone, because they need to submit. They just need to submit, then we evaluate it and says it is or is not a proper invoice. Maybe it's a little bit of a harsh approach, but as opposed to saying, please submit this to make it a proper invoice. We told them, these are the provisions of the contract you need to look at. And please submit a proper invoice.
Well,
Is
I
this
just
a
wanna make sure that
certification?
we have our damages lined up for what we've got to claim against that retainage.
Well, and the question is whether or not we have the ability to even have that recourse, but that's something we need to talk about.
Yeah,
I don't understand that at all.
We'll talk separately. I don't wanna-
Absolutely, I don't, yeah, that's, gets into a legal issue.
So, but I agree.
I just do
agree with
not
Ed, we
wanna
need to
take and see that
We've
money
had
released.
conversations, and, several of us, I think, on what is, what can we, or at least what we feel like we can retain, and I
Well,
think.
a good example is change orders. We processed 2 change orders that were, for the most part, bogus. They were bogus change orders. We got access to get back to those. I don't care if we approved them or not, it was wrong. It was illegal. On a turnkey project, we should have never signed those change orders. They had the responsibility of providing those materials, and it was clear in the scope of the contract that it was written. So we have grounds for doing that.
So I think we need to formally document.
I just wanna make sure that
What we
money
think,
doesn't get released
and
and have to go through bonds or performance bond chasing that to get that money. But the other one then is that we'll take and use April as our sounding board to get items out to the others, because there's certainly things I wanna talk about, that organizational. We've got issues coming up in the next 60 to 90 days that's gonna require staff modifications as being recommended by DeCerbo. And they've got to start, we can't kick this can down the
Well, and I
road.
think what ends up happening is, a recommendation will come through on the 15th. Yeah, so we will be in a position to vote on accepting the org, modifying it, and then even progressing forward. So I think I think we'll be in a position on the 15th, to make a decision.
So then, if we got thoughts on that, run them through April.
Well,
correct?
there's a recommendation that's gonna be coming through based on, I guess,
The work-
Margaret,
the work group.
the work
The work
group
group.
and Joe, there's gonna be a recommendation that's gonna come through. We would either accept that as a whole, or
But I
accept
mean,
it with
when
conditions.
are we gonna see that's my point?
Oh, you guys,
On the 15th.
did you give?
On the 15th.
But we got a preview of it, did we not?
I mean, if we got something, why aren't we all looking at it so we can understand it before the 15th instead of rushing?
Yeah, I would
into it?
like, yeah.
I think we're supposed to be working on it tomorrow, is it tomorrow?
Yes, yeah. If you have information that you'd like to share, send it to April. If you have some
Okay.
concerns or questions, send it to April. And it's very possible we'd be able to address it in advance.
But
Okay.
can we got some information at the last meeting,
Right.
printed out. Can we not get that to Kathleen and to Ed? You
I
got
thought
it?
we gave them copies of it.
Did you get a?
What was handed out at the last meeting.
Is that what the recommendation is going to be? That it?
That was I can't remember what we handed out.
That had all the duties and responsibilities
job
of the 4 key
descriptions,
positions.
The org structure,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that is gonna be really close to what's gonna be coming through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
There's-
that's what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's,
There'll
yeah.
be more detail with the next one, but it wasn't, it's still a work in progress. So if you have anything that you want April to consider, or you want the work group to consider, send it to her.
Okay.
There's a working draft.
Yeah,
The
okay,
working draft.
I'll stop it right there.
Okay,
But that's good, I mean, we want these opportunities to have more open discussion, at least in my opinion.
absolutely. With the idea of FAST, I do want for us to consider the Florida Rural Water Association, which I brought up before. They have a lot of other resources, and it all is concerning water and wastewater. And they've got regulatory information. It's a great resource, and I think it would be worth our while to join this organization
Agree.
also. So
How much is it?
it's like $300-400 a year.
Do you want a motion to join it right now?
Do we need a motion for
I
that
don't think
amount?
it needs to be. I
I don't know
think
why
that
the
I
management
just
can't even
wanna.
just do that.
Yeah.
Right, I want,
Just do it.
I have it noted.
Do you have a copy of it?
I'll make copies of
Okay.
it before I
Yeah,
leave,
I'd
and
say
I'll
just-
give it to April
say
and
just-
Chris,
Just
cause
grab you.
I really think this will be beneficial for us.
Understand.
Okay, and that was the only thing that I had, so with nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Second?
So ordered.
So ordered.
Now, how do you shut this
We
thing?
are